In our previous videos, we covered both substitution and transposition as part of creating a cipher. Modern ciphers are going to use a combination of both the substitution and transposition techniques. The gold standard for today is called the Advanced Encryption Standard. It is an encryption algorithm that has been adopted worldwide and uses both substitution and transposition. You can create your own AES key and initialization vector in Linux by running the following command in the terminal. OpenSSL is allowing you to create it. You use ENC to signal that you are going to create a symmetric cipher. And we'll talk about symmetric encryption in a later video. Then you specified the block cipher that you're going to use. This is an AES 256 block cipher. Then you use P to print the key and the initialization vector when it's done. You specify a password for the key. You can instruct it to use assault or not assault. So in this case, this would not use assault. And the iteration allows you to override the default iterations of 10,000. Higher values are going to increase the time that is required for a brute force attack on the resulting file. We will talk about brute force attacks in our access control video. So with every bit that we have, it's going to increase the number of possible keys to the power of 2. The bit is binary, meaning it has an off or an on position. So if you have one bit, it's going to be 0, 1, so there's 2 possible keys. If you have 2, it's going to be 4. 4 is going to be 16, so it's 2 to the power of the number of the length of the bits in the key. As computing power increases, it also increases the need to increase the length of the bits. So each extra bit doubles the number of possible keys. And strong symmetric encryption is typically 112, 128 bits or higher. I use 512-bit encryption. So here are some of the major key encryption ciphers. Some of these are outdated and should no longer be used. For example, ARC4 was 40 or more bits. It had a very weak key strength. However, the good thing was that the processing and RAM requirements were low. But the weakness of it is that it was used in WEP, which is the initial encryption standard that we had for Wi-Fi. And it was so weak that people could crack the key in such a short amount of time to be able to gain access to individual networks. Luckily, now we have WPA2 and WPA3 that is on the horizon. DES is 56 plus 8 redundant bits. This is also weak, and it has moderate processing and RAM requirements. It was created in the 1970s, and the weakness is that it is short. So to overcome this, researchers have invented what is called 3DES, which is basically taking DES and having 3 times the bits. So it had strong key strength, but its processing and RAM requirements were much higher. The weakness of DES is this was actually slow. The gold standard for today is AES, and there are many key lengths that you can use in AES, 128, 192, or 256. I advocate that you use the higher number where possible. This has strong key strength, and the great thing about AES, and another reason why it's part of the gold standard, is that the processing and RAM requirements are actually very low. So is there a weakness? Maybe, but that's still yet to be determined. So we just discussed modern-day ciphers, and now we're going to talk about cryptographic systems and the various different handshaking stages associated with these. So the first stage is negotiation. So you have a client and a server. A client is going to communicate with the server, and they're going to negotiate what cipher suite that they're going to use. This includes a set of methods, parameters, and options that are associated with this particular cryptographic system. Stage 2 is authentication. So authentication involves a supplicant, a verifier, and credentials. So the supplicant is the one who's going to prove their identity by using their credentials, such as a password or multi-factor authentication. And the verifier is going to either choose to accept or reject the supplicant based on the credentials. The third stage is king, which is the secure delivery of secrets between 2 parties. Now we will talk about this much more in detail in a later video. The fourth stage is ongoing communication. This ensures message-by-message confidentiality, integrity, and authentication, which are some of the security fundamentals that we previously discussed. So it protects against illegitimate messages. They check to see if the messages are actually what they were instead of that alterations were made, etc. So why are modern ciphers and cryptography important? Well, as you communicate with another user, if you do not have the proper cryptography techniques in play, a man in the middle attack can happen where you basically have a middleman that goes and intercepts your message and is able to do whatever they want with that message if it is not properly encrypted. It could even be encrypted, but encrypted with a poor technique that the middleman could still be able to decipher it and get the message out. So you can see the importance of cryptography here as we look throughout the years. The data breaches have continued to increase, with a few years going down, but generally the trend is almost exponentially increasing. And why? Because many hackers want access to our records. This graph is by Statistica, where the number of individuals impacted have been as high as 2.5 billion in 2016. And then it has decreased, but now it's back on the rise. So we need to make sure that our records are properly encrypted so that this does not happen. Back in 2015, only 4% of those breaches were secure breaches, meaning that the data was properly encrypted. So even if the hacker obtained it, they weren't able to do anything with it. Now, from what I have seen, the trend is that breaches are becoming more and more secure, which is a good thing, especially since the number of breaches is steadily increasing. So now try this learning activity where I want you to first generate a key and initialization vector using openssl, as we described previously. Then open crypty.com and do the following. We are going to use a modern cipher to demonstrate how to do encryption. When you're done with those 6 steps, then we'll take the ciphertext below and we'll decrypt it. So pause the video and try this on your own and then come back to see how this is done. All right, welcome back. So the first thing that we're going to do is generate the openssl key and initialization vector using the command that we showed you previously. So here is the command, and I changed the capital password to just my password. You could type in whatever password you want there. I'll go ahead and run this command, and you'll notice that it generates a key and initialization vector that I'm going to use for a later step. So now we are going to go to Crypty and finish the modern encryption cipher. So you'll notice here in Crypty on the left here, we have our original text. In the middle, we have our encryption or decryption algorithm. And on the right, we have the ciphertext that would be generated from this. So we'll go ahead and keep the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, but you could do any text that you want here. We are going to encode. We want to use the block cipher under modern cryptography. We're going to change this from AES 128 to AES 256. And we'll get an error message here because this now means I need to copy the key from the openssl command that we ran just barely. So there is the key. And then I also need to copy the initialization vector. And then click the plus icon between the two blocks. And we're going to add base 64. So you now notice that this has generated our ciphertext. So now what we're going to do is try to decrypt the ciphertext that I have on the learning activity. So now I'm going to paste the ciphertext from the previous part of our video. I'll then click decode. And then we're going to change the key and the initialization vector to what I have on the previous part of the video as well. So here's the new key, and here is the new initialization vector. We are also using the AES 128 algorithm, and we need to change base 64 to decode. Since we did the base 64 after, we also need to move it before here in order to decipher our message. And as you can see, it has generated the decrypted text of Cryptography is Amazing. Thanks for watching my video. Feel free to click the links here to watch the next video of the playlist, continue to the next playlist, or subscribe.